Welcome to the Millcreek Government Channel. I'm Judy Zelina. On our program today we have joining us Corporal Anthony Shamira. And Corporal Shamira is with the Traffic Division of the Millcreek Police Department. Thank you so much for joining us today,
Thanks
Corporal.
for having me, Judy.
We've been doing a little bit of talking, and quite honestly, you've got some interesting information that I really think our residents need to get out. So, but your job's pretty interesting. What are some of the duties that you would do?
Well, I work primarily with traffic-related things only. If you have a traffic-related issue in your neighborhood, say, people speeding, stop sign violations, things like that, I would field all those calls, and I would go and try and take some action to help that problem. I work with traffic crashes. I'm in the investigation unit. I also handle all school bus related things that are brought to us by the First Student Company here in Millcreek.
Okay. Speaking of school bus safety, talking to you, I know, Corporal, that is an issue that there's a lot of, I guess, confusion with.
I agree.
Laws change. I know when I took my driver's test a few years ago, things changed, really, because I would ask you about something and say, well, when I took the test, this is what it was, and you said, Judy, that law changed many years ago. So that's what I would like, I think, to talk. One of the subjects I want to talk about with traffic safety to our viewers is the different school bus laws and actually what motorists should know, and also what should the students know.
Okay. I think first of all, I get all the school bus related things that are sent over from First Student. When I say that, what I mean is anytime a school bus driver comes across a violation involving their bus, they will fill out a report, they will send it to the police, and then we will have to go and follow up with that and determine if indeed there was a school bus violation there. And if there is, we will cite the person for that violation. The biggest thing that I'm seeing anymore is that people are not quite clear on what the bus laws are. For instance, I think everybody knows that if you meet a school bus, you're traveling and the bus is coming in the opposite direction.
Right.
I think everybody knows that if you see the red lights, you've got to stop for that bus.
Exactly.
The law even specifies that you need to keep your vehicle a certain distance from that bus when you reach it. 10 feet is the rule.
All right.
You got to be at least 10 feet from that bus when you are either approaching it or whether you're behind the bus. You got to stop your vehicle within 10 feet. Everybody seems to be pretty clear on that one. The one that I'm seeing most is the intersection type violation. Here's where people are getting confused by this. Back in, I think it was 97 or 98, the law changed. And I think that people are not quite aware that that law has changed.
Probably not.
Right, because most of the people I'm seeing, or I'm speaking with, are like, wow, I had no idea that law even changed.
Right.
Here's what the law states. If you come to an intersection, let's say it's a four-way intersection with stop signs all the way around.
All right.
If a school bus comes to that intersection and stops there to either pick kids up or drop them off, if that bus stops and it activates its red lights and its stop arm, all the other traffic in every other direction at that intersection has got to stop and remain stopped the whole time while that bus has its red lights on. Okay. What I'm seeing is people are coming to these intersections. Let's say the bus is coming from their right here. They'll come to the intersection, they'll stop, they'll take a look, they'll see the school bus, and they'll say, well, I'm not turning toward the bus, I'm turning away from the bus. Or maybe I'm going across this way. And they'll proceed through the intersection. They'll either go straight or they'll turn left, and as soon as they've done that, they've just committed a school bus violation.
Wow.
Unbeknownst to them.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and they don't even realize they're doing it. The school bus drivers do. They realize that that's a violation. They're writing down their information, they're forwarding it to me, I'm going and telling them, hey, you just committed a school bus violation.
Okay,
And they don't
so
even
you
know.
get these from the school bus drivers. They'll
drivers,
actually get your
right.
license
Right.
plate
The
number.
state law basically requires that if these school bus drivers see the violation, they have to report it to the police, and then we have to go and follow up with that person.
Well, I think that's very important because I do meet school buses at that four-way stop sign. Okay, once they've picked up children or dropped off children, do we all wait and let the school bus go first? Is that the way it usually is?
Yes.
Okay. Just to be on the safe side, let them go first.
Right. Just always let the buses go
They have
first.
precious cargo, please.
Right.
Let's
I
be
mean,
careful
we're talking
here.
about the safety of our kids here.
Right.
I always tell people when I'm finished, if you're ever in a situation you're not sure if you need to stop for that bus, you don't need to stop anyway, because it's always better to err on the side of safety when it comes to the kids.
Okay. Now, Corporal, we've talked about the red lights, and when the red lights go on, that stop alarm comes down.
Right.
Explain, what should I know about the caution lights? Those come on, say the bus is coming towards me, the caution lights are coming on. Do I have to stop right then and there, or do I proceed past the bus? What is the rule of thumb or the law?
The way the law reads there is that, see, the bus drivers have got to activate their caution lights, their yellow amber lights, when they are approaching their stop.
All right.
They have to do so 150 feet, at least 150 feet,
Okay.
before they get to their stop. That way it alerts the traffic that they're about to make the stop. You, as the driver, need to pay attention to those lights. What the law says is that when you, in addition to your duties at the red lights, everybody knows you have to stop. It also specifies that you have a duty when you see the amber lights.
Okay.
And that duty is that you must be prepared to stop your vehicle. So basically I think what they're saying is when you see the yellow lights, you need to be ready to stop.
All right, because
You're not-
you don't know
you're
how
not-
far
right.
away from
You certainly don't want to
the
be
stop.
thinking about, hey, I see the yellow lights. I don't want to stop for this bus, so I'm going to speed up and try to get past the bus.
All right.
What they're intending there is that when you're seeing these lights, you're slowing down, you're getting ready to stop. If, like the example you said there, if you're coming up, the bus is coming in this direction, you see the yellow lights, you need to stop your vehicle or get ready to stop. Now, if that bus passes you and stops way up here, you can go ahead and proceed.
Okay.
Yeah, you can proceed. But
Because
you-
I'm
but you need
already
to be-
past his point, his stop.
Right.
All
Yeah.
right.
If he goes ahead and passes you, and then makes a stop behind you,
All right.
you're okay there. But what they don't want is for people to start to see the yellow lights and say, okay, got to get going.
Right.
Got to get in front of this bus. They want you to
Okay.
be ready to stop your car.
No racing. No racing, that's school bus.
That's right.
This is the one, Corporal, that you and I have talked about that I was very unsure with. 4-lane highways. Let's use example West 26th Street out here. Can you explain the laws of stopping on a 4-way highway?
Sure. The some of Westridge Road here in Millcreek is even 5 lanes. There's 2 eastbound lanes, 2 westbound lanes, and a center turn lane.
Exactly.
So some of these roads are very wide. Now, the way the law reads is that so long as there is nothing dividing the highway. Now, they say physical divider. That can be a grass boulevard. It can be a curb. It can be a concrete median, a boulevard, some things like that. If there's anything that is actually physically dividing
All right.
these lanes of traffic from these lanes of traffic.
Okay.
Trying to think of a good example. Anybody that's ever traveled on Green Garden Boulevard, there's a lane of traffic this way, there's a grass boulevard in the middle, there's a lane of traffic on the other side.
Okay.
Now, if there is that physical divider, the people on the opposite side of the street do not need to stop for that bus.
All right.
If there is no divider, such as Westridge Road, even though it is 5 lanes wide, you must still stop your vehicle in both directions there. And I see a lot of violations right here on Westridge Road in Millcreek for that very reason. People are traveling in the opposite direction. They're 4 and 5 lanes over this way. they're not paying attention to the bus on the other side. They're zooming by it. The bus drivers are calling. Other motorists are seeing them doing this.
Right.
They're calling me with the information.
And then I think sometimes they even don't realize that with it being a 4 or 5 lane highway, that they really do have to stop.
Right. I think people are under the misconception that because the road is so wide, or that the bus is way over there, they're not required to stop, but they actually are. There needs to be some kind of physical divider there,
okay,
in order to for them not to have to stop for that bus.
Are there any other school bus laws that you see that people are breaking? A lot of times without knowing, too.
Yeah, those are the main ones.
Our main reason is to educate the people, let them know the updated laws, so you aren't being called in by a bus driver.
Right. Those are the main ones. Just the, I think by far the biggest one is the intersection one. People are not aware that that law has changed, and that anytime you approach an intersection, it doesn't even matter what kind of intersection. If it's a 3-way, a 4-way, if there's a bus and it's at the intersection, and you come to that intersection, you must stop, and you must remain stopped the whole time until that bus turns its red lights off and goes. Then you can proceed.
What are the penalties? They're pretty stiff, aren't they?
They really are, yeah, and understandably so. We're talking about kids here, but Pennsylvania does not mess around with this. The laws are, the penalties are a fine of $365, which is pretty steep. In addition to that, there's 5 points added to your license. And in addition to that, there is a 60-day mandatory license suspension. Wow. Meaning PennDOT, upon conviction of this, will take your license from you for a period of 60 days.
Wow.
Right.
So they don't mess around, that's why.
Not, right. And most insurance companies, once they find out that you have been convicted of a school bus related matter, they usually will raise your rates as well. So it's pretty serious all the way around.
So that's why we're here today talking about different school bus safety. I want to touch briefly though on we as motorists have responsibilities, but also the students.
Sure.
Riding the buses have responsibilities, and these are things that they should be aware of, or the parents should be aware of, letting them know. What would be some of the responsibilities, a safety tip for some of the students?
Well, I think that we as adults or parents or grandparents have to constantly remind our kids to do these things. I mean, I have 2 teenage kids myself. I'm constantly reminding them to do things. But Constantly, right. So I know how it is, but the most important thing for these kids is to, at the stops themselves, keep themselves away from the curb when the bus is approaching. You need to be, I would say, at least 10 to 12 feet back from the bus. You don't want to be standing right on the curb waiting for the bus. When the kids are going to the bus stop or about to cross the street, they need to make sure that they are crossing at the crosswalks or in front of the bus. Otherwise, in front of the bus. They don't want to be behind the bus. It makes it very difficult for the driver to see them back there, and for other motorists to see them. So I think that's important. And as far as the kids, one other thing is you don't want the kids to start crossing the street before the bus gets there. Lots of times these kids, they get so accustomed to, seeing the bus come and seeing traffic stop that they'll actually start walking out into the street before the bus has even
They see the bus coming on the horizon and they
that's dangerous.
Ready to cross the road, right?
They need to make sure that the bus comes to its stop and that the other motorists are going to stop for that bus before they start crossing the street. As far as on the bus itself, I've driven by buses, I've seen kids bouncing around, and otherwise it's a very big distraction for the driver.
Yes, it is.
I mean, that driver of the bus has a very important job, and he's got a lot going on his plate there. He's got, sometimes 30 or 40 kids on the bus. He's trying to pay attention to traffic patterns. He's, kids are screaming and bouncing. They need to make sure that they are not distracting the driver. He's got a big responsibility, and they need to be cognizant that he's got a lot on his plate there.
Yes, he certainly does. Talking about distractions, you and I earlier, Corporal, were talking about distracted driving. There are many factors that can cause a driver to become distracted.
Right.
And what are what's like the top distraction that you see in your field?
There's a lot of them. The list of distractions is probably endless, but you know, I see people eating, grooming, playing with the radio, yelling at their kids, you know, and probably the most dangerous, being on their cell phones or texting while they're driving.
I think that really gets me nervous too. When I see someone and I know they're like this, I know what they're doing.
Right.
They're not checking to make sure that cup of coffee is still hot.
Right. By far, I think the worst distracted driving behavior is the texting, and the reason being is because in order to be texting while you're driving, you're taking your visual off the road, you are manually taking your hand off the wheel because you're texting, and you're cognitively having to think about what you're doing. You're thinking about the text, you're thinking about punching numbers, so all three of those things completely take away your attention to the road, and it makes you a very dangerous driver.
And I can't even say that it's one age group. We always say, oh, it's the young kids, but no, I think it's every age group is guilty of talking on their cell phone.
Yeah, I think just because the kids are a little more tech savvy maybe than some of the older people, I think
this is true. Yeah,
yeah.
I can vouch for that one.
Having some teenage kids, I know that they'd rather text you than talk to you, but I think that's probably why they are the biggest the number of crashes involving the teens is the highest, just because they're so tech savvy, they're on the phone all the time.
I love the commercials that are out now about it can wait.
Right.
And it truly can. I can remember when I first got my first cell phone, and when it would ring when I was in the car, I didn't pick it up and answer because I says, no, it can't be that important, and I'd wait till I could pull over.
Right.
But then honestly, you just kind of get complacent.
Right.
And I might pick it up, or if I'm leaving work, I might say, oh, well, this will be a quick time to get a phone call in because I won't be able to talk to them the rest of the day. But truly, I think if we can all remember that it can wait,
right,
that's so important, and that's one less distraction.
Yeah, that's the best advice I have for people is just either if you absolutely have to call somebody or answer the phone when you're driving, either A, pull into a parking lot somewhere and do so off the road, or B, just let it ring. You know, if it's that important, they'll keep calling, in which case you can pull over and talk to them. But you know, most of us are driving for 10, 15 minutes at a time. I mean,
right.
You know, it's just not worth it. There's a lot of dangers in taking your eyes off the road for that long.
That's true. And you know, after talking with you about doing this show, I have become more aware of the fact that I'm not answering my cell phone while I'm driving. It's just a little thing, but at least there's more cars on the road than every year. There's more and more cars. If
Sure.
I can become a little bit more aware
Right.
and not as distracted.
Yeah. They've actually passed a new law here pertaining to texting while driving because of all the reasons we just discussed.
Right, yes.
The state government has recognized that this is an extremely dangerous habit, and they went ahead and passed a law here prohibiting texting specifically.
So you can pull someone over if you see them texting?
Absolutely,
okay,
yes.
Good.
They made it a primary offense,
right.
Meaning that we can pull people over on site for doing this.
Good.
It does not prohibit cell phone use altogether. You can still, as of right now, you can still use your phone for verbal communications. But you cannot use it for texting purposes.
Let's try not to.
Right.
And I promise I only put lipstick on when I am at a red light. I promise that. We talked briefly that there are some new laws I think that people should be aware of too, Corporal. Can you let our viewers know what some of them are?
Within the past year, the seatbelt law has changed here with regard to juvenile drivers, meaning under the age of 18. And I think the reason being is the state is seeing that a large percentage of crashes have to do with young drivers. So naturally they're interested in protecting these young drivers and making sure. They've actually passed laws for juveniles. They now require that they have more training than they used to have.
Good.
More behind the wheel training.
Right.
More nighttime training, more bad weather training, which is all good. They also are starting to limit the distractions on these young drivers. And the biggest distraction being they've got buddies in the car, they've got friends. So for like the first year that they drive, the state prohibits how many other kids they can have in the car. They actually go so far as to say for the first 6 months that you're driving, you can only have one other person under the age of 18.
See, I didn't know that.
Yeah. The exception being if it's a sibling, if it's a family member, you can have those people in the car. But what they're trying to prevent is the teen driver from picking up 4 and 5 friends that are distracting. So they made that prohibition. They also changed the seatbelt laws. Now they made it a primary offense for anyone under the age of 18 to not be wearing a seatbelt. Now, the driver is the one that is going to be responsible for this. So if you have a driver that's also under the age of 18, let's say they've got 3 or 4 buddies in the car, none of them are seatbelted. That driver of that car now gets penalized for for themselves, number one, and for each other person in the car that's not seatbelted. And this is where it's new now. It used to be, seatbelts used to be a secondary offense, meaning we couldn't stop people just because we saw that they were unbelted. Well, now they can, and we can. And if we see kids under the age of 18 and they're bouncing around in the car, they're not seatbelted, now we can pull them over just for that. And most likely the person that's driving is going to be responsible for that.
Well, seatbelts are so important.
Indeed.
You've seen results of people not wearing seatbelts as compared to them wearing them.
You really got to wear it.
We're coming to the end of the show, but I wanted to go over this briefly too. We talked about this, and I found that I'm not doing this correctly. I'm not supposed to, when I wear my seatbelt, sometimes I take the strap and I put it behind me.
Right.
That's a no-no, and I found that out, and Corporal Shamira will tell you, don't do that.
Right.
Because you do need the whole, that's being seatbelted properly, correct?
Right. It's actually against the law to wear it that
I really
way.
don't do that.
And so,
no, I don't. I don't, Corporal.
And I pull people over all the time when I see it, and the biggest complaint that I hear people say is that the seatbelt, when they have it across their chest, like they should, it digs them. It digs into their neck or whatever, and it rubs them, and it's uncomfortable for them, basically. So what they'll do is they'll take the chest part and they will pull it around behind them. Well, in doing so, not only is it unsafe for the driver, but it's also illegal to do that. So you need to make sure that most cars nowadays have an adjustment right along the side
to make sure that you use that.
So that you can, if it's up too high and it's cutting into your neck here, you can adjust it to bring it down. You basically, you want that seatbelt to be coming straight across your chest here for optimal safety, basically.
Well, see, this is why we do the show, so you know the do's and the don'ts of traffic safety.
Right.
Thank you so much for coming onto the program, Corporal Anthony Shamira. Thank you for keeping us safe.
It's a pleasure.
Okay, viewers, again, if you have any questions, you can also call our Millcreek Police Department. They'd be glad to help you, or Corporal Shamira. Thank you for tuning into the Millcreek Government Channel. Till next time, have a wonderful day.